Good afternoon again to everyone. I would like to express how honored I am for being here today. My thanks to the College of Education, the Curriculum and Instruction Department, and especially Professor Alegre-RS-Brazil for inviting me to share my thoughts about some issues involving teacher education. I myself am a music educator, so my major is that area. I just brought a map from Brazil just to show you a little bit where I come from. Here is Porto Alegre, south of Brazil, border with my state, Rio Grande do Sul, with Argentina and Uruguay. Here, stay a little bit here. And here is a map divided by regions, southeast, southwest, very agriculture region, here very industrial region. Here is the sort of tourist area, and here is the Amazon area. So Brazil is very diverse, many countries in one country. Here we have the 4 seasons, and above this line, more or less, we So a little bit of my university is a federal one. We have more than 2,400 higher education institutions in Brazil and 64 federal universities. Mine is one of them and the third largest in Brazil. Around 50,000 students we have there. So my talk today is going to draw upon my experience as a teacher, educator, and supervisor at the undergraduate and postgraduate level, plus my 15 and more years working with international affairs management, 7 of which in all areas of knowledge. The latter was paramount to shape my view of the profession as a teacher and lecturer, when I was able to reflect upon what it takes to be a teacher as opposed to work in a different industry, because I worked in all areas of knowledge, from vet studies to law, to medicine, to engineering, and so had to learn a little bit of everything. But first I would like to start with a I read in your website, which I would like you you all know, we focus on the ways people teach and learn. The department cultivates outstanding educators interested in pursuing research, improving their teaching, and enhancing their career. Our students are excellent teachers who become leaders in their fields and are highly recruited. So that is a quote that I got from your website. This quote says a lot about the long-lasting experience of this college and department in terms of educating teachers. The timeline of how the college evolved shows the commitment with quality, with the constant adaptation to changing times when it comes to teacher education. The quote has the word leadership and the fact that the alumni are highly regarded among the professional community, which addresses the employability opportunities. So congratulations to all of you for belonging to this college and university. Teacher education is a complex enterprise in all parts of the world. In the last 50 years, we have witnessed many changes in the way we understand and conceive education and its process. Education is far from being a naive area of study. Rather, it is loaded with social, cultural, and ideological meaning. Talking about education in a worldwide sense is even more complex due to the myriad of contextual variables to be taken into account. For today, I have chosen to focus my talk on an overview of 3 complementary sections, divided as such only for didactic reasons because they are intertwined. So, worldwide challenges to educate teachers for a culturally complex future, complexity surrounding social and economic scenarios and how education is impacted, and job markets for teachers in the future. So I will start by saying that prejudices are most of the time learned, and over time they become individualized feature to then become part of the social identity of a specific group. Being born within a German family in a Brazilian rural area, many times I faced discrimination of my school colleagues for having a German accent on my Portuguese and being part of a rural community that was less valued than the urban areas. This has shaped the early years of my life and ended up having an impact on my career path regarding my interest on international cooperation with cultural diversity and also my interest on social inclusion. When in international positions, being a woman and from Brazil required me to excel my professional competencies to be heard. Sometimes I felt that it sounded like I didn't belong to that picture. Over the years, instead of collecting resentments, this experience brought me to work towards the awareness of cultural richness and worldwide diversity. It also fostered the need for respect and overall how on our daily work as teachers we can make a difference no matter which subject we teach. So the small comment from the settings I came from just serves as an example of the way we can and should challenge adversities as teachers. A professional career has many of them. Almost everything we read today about national or international education systems, words such as comparative analysis, equivalence, quality assurance are the main ones raised in all levels of education. International assessment of basic education, we call it here K-12, such as PISA from OECD and international rankings of universities are a common practice of what one could name as the global parameters of education systems. These are devised by developed countries, as we can see, through which nations belong to OECD, for example. There are policies for improving education standards around the world, reducing poverty through education, among others. So the growing desire of governments and regions to set up international standards and comparative evaluations for education, PISA, for example, is a way of minimizing diversity and get complex issues transformed into documents to be distributed to schools and teachers. The same can be applied to universities that rush to have better positions in international rankings, to attract more students, and to have a larger income. All of those global actions have as a basis cross-cultural and comparative goals, or as in some educational professional circles, they would call it the neo-colonization of value systems. Some decades ago, each country devised its own educational system. But nowadays, education groups work like supermarket chains on an international level, as transnational education is on high speed. A great number of universities around the world are large corporations, and profit is their main goal. A similar situation is happening with K-12 education. And Brazil, I would say, is an example of country where big groups have bought private chains of schools and universities, and thus their lobby at the Ministry of Education is far stronger than local institutions. So it is easy to put together some words such as globalization, transnational education, etc. However, we should ask ourselves one basic question: what kind of world are we talking about? From a geopolitical perspective, it is certainly not a bipolar one, as it once was during the Cold War. Rather, a multipolar world, where changes occur so rapidly, with the international news reminding us how many regional conflicts and wars we have today, how intolerance is spreading, being those of cultural, ideological, or religious nature. These situations are difficult to absorb in our daily teaching practice, being at K-12 to higher education. Just an example, when I was the director of our National Research Agency in Brasilia, I was going to visit one country, well, I'm not going to say the name, and we prepared the mission with the embassy, the local embassy, to see presidents of universities and do all kinds of agreements, especially in hard sciences. And 2 days before my trip, that country was invaded. So everything was canceled, everything was changed, and we could not go back to the country. So working with education and international affairs is quite a challenge. The world's growing political, economic, and social tensions have been a matter of great concern of governments and international organizations who have been trying to create solutions to deal with these issues. In some countries, especially developing ones, education is seen as an alternative to help societies to overcome all kinds of problems, ranging from poverty, racial discrimination, ideological tensions, to religious radicalism. However, the world's education initiatives have not been sufficient to mitigate problems faced in different parts of the world. The UN, through its organizations such as UNESCO, have had a central role in devising specific programs and policies on the education and cultural sector to minimize such tensions. In 2010, the UN launched the Year of Rapprochement of Cultures, that's the name, motivated by the need to search for alternative strategies to promote mutual understanding among cultures, being those in local, national, regional, when I talk about region, is world regions, or international levels. This proposal was endorsed by the United Nations General Assembly, entitled Promotion of Interreligious and Intercultural Dialogue, Understanding and Cooperation for Peace. That's the main call, by which it invited UNESCO to be the leading agencies for the United Nations system. And the year has its peak on the second World Conference on Arts Education in Seoul, where we also launched the Millennium Goals for Arts Education. In 2013, UNESCO created the International Decade for Rapprochement of Culture, where workshops and seminars are taking place around the world. One of those was the workshop on intercultural competencies for social inclusion, called Panama to 2030. So I don't know if you can read, you all can read. To identify intercultural conflicts and local culture, those were the aims. Yes? The message to the world has always been towards finding out innovative ways to devise inclusive living in a world of growing diversity or diverse societies. In order to achieve that, one issue that has to be addressed in the paradox is the paradox of globalization versus cultural protection. You all heard of that. In one hand, the world is becoming more globalized than ever when it comes to the financial and economic sector. On the other hand, we have witnessing society and cultures protecting themselves to maintain their cultural identities, mixed sometimes with xenophobia behavior. This phenomenon can be seen on a micro level inside countries where multicultural societies have difficulties to contemplate the needs of all strata, as far as policies are concerned. Schools are, in a way, a representation of those attempts where social and cultural inclusion have played an important role on the education policies. on curriculum development, and consequently on teacher education at colleges and universities. So multicultural issues are not something to be seen only outside our national or regional borders, but also inside our schools and classrooms. As teachers, we have to be able to deal with it once our classrooms are becoming more diverse and thus culturally rich. This will require an expanded view of the world and its diversity that goes beyond a specific selection of knowledge and skills we want to promote to our children and youth. We may, at the end of the day, manage to deal with diversity inside the classroom, giving voice to students to express their cultural standpoint. However, as teachers, we have something called the school curriculum. So is there any chance for us to complement the compulsory content expected to be taught? There is nothing new about this question, and it has widely been dealt by sociology of education, philosophy of the education, by authors such as Michael Young, Paulo Freire, and many others. I rather pose it again to help us to reflect on the importance of dealing with diversity, with this shared selection of knowledge in the classroom. Further, to question our role in developing school policies. Are we only reproducing our policies, or are we part of it? No matter how much one can study or learn about other countries and cultures, I would say that nothing replaces the experience of living abroad, even for a short period, to face language and communication issues, etc. Thus, experiences abroad are always welcome for someone who wants to become a teacher. To help higher education students to understand and live abroad, countries and regions, and here I say EU, Mercosur in South America, and America as well has policies on that, have come up with programs of international mobility within the undergraduate course of teacher education. These have become somewhat attractive for students because they have been able to experience cross-cultural issues that may come up in their future teaching activities. In fact, the importance of living in a different country or even to learn another language is something that adds value on the teaching career. The downfall is that we become cultural refugees, never losing a multi-perspective way of conceiving our theoretical and practical standpoint. In sum, my view is that nothing will replace one's experience in another culture, in another educational system, no matter the instant access of ICT can offer us. So I feel a cultural refugee because I was born in Brazil from a German family. My first language was German. Studied here for a little, went to England. So those 4 countries that I go, the second day I feel at home. And when I leave, I miss them. So that's the downfall of it. Well, we all carry many models and theories or set of beliefs on how we should teach students. However, no matter how much we teach our undergraduate students about curriculum development, about ICT, project-based learning, differentiated learning, individualized learning, etc., nothing replaces the need to prepare societies to live in harmony. And for that to happen, we have to make education for multicultural societies a transversal subject, or as UNESCO proposes. The rapprochement of cultures implies that international security and social inclusions cannot be attained sustainably without a commitment to such principle of human dignity, conviviality, and solidarity, which are the cornerstones of human coexistence in all faith and secular ideologies. I will now move to the second item and will bring some situations where social and economic issues relate to education, either to use to bridge the gap between different social strata or to widening even more. For almost 2 decades, I worked in different positions in international affairs. As a teacher, the most significant one was when I became the president of the International Society for Music Education, a society that holds members in more than 80 countries. During those years, I had the opportunity to know different education systems around the world, the conflict among cultural and religious standpoints, the economic gap between different regions, and how all of those issues had a direct impact on education, on the lives of people, especially children and youth. During my presidency, I extended the regional conferences. We had just one region, Latin America, and I extended to 5 regions of the world so we could discuss in between years what were the issues of specific regions. This extension gave music educators a sense of the complexity of different schooling systems, a sense on how many times we take for granted that everything works well, that the issues we consider problems are actually minor ones comparing to what other countries face. For example, we can have a room with 26 computers and one is broken, and we say, oh my God, how am I going to teach? Or as I said, how am I going to present there? But then you go to a country, or even in Brazilian regions, some regions, that you have a paper and a pencil, and you have to make the most out of it. So taking for granted certain things is not good. With education becoming a commodity and schools becoming an industry that produces and sells specific goods, formal education is concerned with delivering educational products to different strata of the society. The public schools in most developing countries are schools where a minimum curriculum is developed according to the national guidelines. And by teaching children of these economically deprived areas how to behave in groups, how to ease peer group conflicts, how to bridge emotional gaps from not having an established family at home, and in order to be accepted at the school settings. In Brazil, these are the majority of schools, and I believe that in many developing countries, the situation is the same. The private schools, they work as businesses, with their values and missions mostly market-driven. The curriculum is designed to develop leaders, to build a professional career, and to have good job opportunities in the future. There is a wide difference between these 2 educational systems. Once they have different facilities, different curriculum, different professionals, and thus different outcomes. This deepens even further the social gap once it allows no room for social mobility. In many countries, that is also related to ethnicity discrimination, which adds further difficulties to deal with. Sometimes the undermining process comes through the ability of someone from a foreign country to express himself or herself in a different language. At the end of the day, the market opportunities are really going to be different. So philosophers have asked this question, how ethical that is. In one of my trips to Africa, to an African country for an ESME regional conference, I heard the speech of the Honorable Minister of Education, Cultural, and Wildlife, where she was referring to the importance of music to develop more socially and respectful human beings, and how music, which is my area, could be used to minimize the effects of AIDS spreading and other health issues related to behavior. Not only in the African continent, but also in other continents and countries, I heard that music education schools was used according to the social and economical issues of the country or culture. Here are some examples. In countries where informal music practice are highly disseminated, the rationale has been to value those activities and leave the school for the more relevant subjects. In Brazil, I heard many times politicians saying, oh, Brazilian people, they are so musical. They do carnival, they do music in streets. Why should we have music in schools? Let's leave the time for other subjects. And Leora, later on, you can tell your story about your African experience. In others, where religions form the basis of government policies, music education is not high on the government's agenda. The rationale here is that it can induce children and youth to adopt behavior from secular traditions, which would represent a kind of betrayal to religious principles adopted in each country. And I remember one country where we had the ISME conference. We had the education minister that was against the conference because it would bring many foreign countries, many foreign influence in music, and the cultural minister saying, well, schools should participate and get to know other things. Violence in low HDI, Human Development Index, that is an UN index where they measure the gross income of the population and other criteria that they have. There is at least one issue that is touching governments around the world, and this relates to the rising in youth violence motivated by factors such as poor and economical social backgrounds, drugs consumption, among others. Some governments, especially from medium and low HDI countries, have found in music education a way to decrease violence in social projects and take youth and children away from traffic dealers and thus promoting social inclusion. Brazil is well known for the NGOs working with social projects in that sense. But violence is also an issue in high HDI, in developed countries. Recently has also been used to advocate for music education opportunity in developed countries. UK is an example where they have NGOs adopting informal music learning practices and unconventional teaching approaches to empower children and youth. So, and the last one, we have the public health. That following what the minister said in the African country to stop the AIDS among youngsters. She had a strong belief, listening to her speech, that through music, especially through lyrics and dance, they could convey a message that would help to prevent AIDS transmission through shaping youngsters, especially girls' behavior. So that was the main point that she made. Those short examples are a glimpse on how a specific subject, in this case music, can be used to minimize some social problems caused by poor distribution of wealth. Teachers will face issues related to social economic problems, jobless families, maybe refugees, children and youth from other nationalities. All of these are part of what is called, in some countries, the vulnerable strata of society. And this brings me to my last topic, which will raise some questions for our discussion about job markets for teachers in the future. I brought a video with a selection of, let me just have that. Selection of music of research carried out by teachers at my graduate program at the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, and give you a glimpse of music teaching and learning in different contexts. So if we could do that. These musical examples could have been taking place in almost any part of the world and can be analogous to any school subject as far as teaching and learning is concerned. They show different purposes of engaging with a specific subject, in this case music, the desire to master a skill, formal and non-formal teaching and learning. It also reminds us the exclusive learning opportunities with little integration and cross-fertilization among different locus. What is done inside school has no resemblance to what is done outside. Non-formal learning, mainly through imitation, trial and error, and processes of formal education, makes us think about different locus and a worldwide opportunity to work as a teacher. What we saw in a short video was, in fact, alternative routes of learning music, which ways of learning and repertoire socially related to what children and youngsters want to do, as opposed to what schools offer them. These were a number of social projects in a country that values very little humanistic education. It is an opportunity also to reflect about job markets for teachers in the future and what will be the new role of them in a globalized economy system and at the same time within a complex culturally world. In music education, we have been asking, where are teachers going to work in the future? Will there be a no man's land job market where no teachers are needed? These are questions education professionals have to reflect upon because it is directly related to our profession from K to postgraduate education. When in my international affairs position, I met a number of business people, and they were adamant to say that universities in Brazil were not preparing the professionals they need to fulfill their jobs appropriately. Many people complained that their workers were poorly prepared to face adversities, and in fact, what was needed were professionals that were creative and fast adapting to specific contexts, besides, obviously, the mastery of the field of study. They also complained about the disappearance of new leadership and entrepreneurs. In the education field, research carried out by INAP showed that teachers are poorly prepared to face cultural, social, and economical diversity in classrooms, as if they were prepared to a perfect and unique school setting. Over decades, the world faced a rise in research data concerning cognitive, emotional, and brain, physical, development of children and youngsters, the social and economical influences on the way we learn, and ultimately the way we should teach and interact with children when in formal education settings. Old pedagogies have always given way to new ones that seem to address the complexities of a specific time frame. Teacher education in colleges around the world were, until some years ago, quite sure they had completed their task by graduating teachers and releasing them to face what once was conceived as one block formal education market. Sorry, the wordings are mine, perhaps not perfect in English. But now paper and pens are computers, and soon robots. Libraries are internet. And telephones are a myriad of social media. There is a whole set of skills that teachers need to fulfill the market requirements, and that does not start at the undergraduate course, but rather in K-12 education. Additionally, the undergraduate teacher education course is understood as initial education, giving way to what has been called a lifelong learning, acknowledging that the profession is a lifelong endeavor. But from less than a decade ago, the pace of change is quite different, and we may not talk about adapting or changing pedagogies, but rather educational paradigms. Personally, my concern has been about what can we expect to be the future markets for teachers or prepare for jobs that have not been created yet. I know that the World Education Forum have been raised that issue of the jobs that have not been created yet and how universities and other schooling system will prepare for that. My personal view is that the sooner we start this discussion, the higher are the chances we can be at the cutting edge of promoting changes that have a positive impact in the education of these professionals. Education will likely be more on demand, as they are already talking, based on the individual mental cognitive capabilities. We could even name it as the genetic and cultural uniqueness model. So in some, future job opportunities for alumni will depend on how college or university will be concerned with alumni employability. And I think this College of Education is very concerned about that and fulfilling its role. For that to happen in a worldwide scale, institutions have to leave room for international mobility, having students from other countries who can bring different perspectives to our daily work. We can and should learn with and from each other and make our profession a powerful tool to educate in the 21st century. This, in my view, contributes immensely for a university or college to be a world-class institution. Well, I would thank you once more for the opportunity of being here today, and I expect some questions and some comments that we may have. Thank you.
In your experiences doing Brazilian teacher education, what kinds of changes you've seen towards some of the goals you've mentioned, for instance, preparing teachers for more culturally diverse classrooms, linguistic diversity?
Yes. I think less linguistic diversity, but very much on inclusion of different strata, social inclusion, because Brazil has moved a lot into that ethnic awareness and things like that. So teachers have been prepared now, not only at the undergraduate courses, the newly income teachers that are inside the courses, but also teachers that are already teaching. So they have continuous education into that. So they have been working a lot against prejudice about the Indian populations that we have a lot at university as well, to bring those students into the classroom. With the Indians, we have had some issues, like, for example, in engineering courses where the standard is very high and they had a poor K-12 education, then they have difficulties, and so they have extra classes and things like that. So there are some policies in place, but perhaps we don't have as many other countries so many language diversity. That is not a strong issue of having among 30 children, 15 nationalities, for example. That happens in some countries. But we are far, far away from being in a perfect stage. Lots of things have to improve.
What are the levels, just to follow up on Lee's question, what are the levels in the way, so would you say that this is in elementary and secondary school? Is there any, and how is it being addressed? Because it's such a complex issue and we grapple, as you say, with it as college. What are some of the ways in which people work with it? And what education level? Does it include university level?
Yes, include the university level, yes. They have special assistants, they have integrated lessons of, talking about the culture, bringing the issues inside the classroom, and especially at the beginning of undergraduate courses. In some universities, I cannot talk about all universities, but in federal universities, they have been bringing that issue, and perhaps my colleagues from also federal universities can help me with that. But really, that has been an issue very much that the Brazilian government has been concerned with, because it had, our education was very towards, medium upper class education, especially higher education. 18% of the higher education population in that age frame only go to universities. Only 18%. Yes. We still have 11% of the total population, 11 of the total of illiterate people in Brazil. And among the illiterates, of course, in more economically deprived areas, and also the different ethnic groups that we have in the country. For example, if we take the history, Brazil was larger in terms of slavery than North America, for example. And I think here you solved in many ways the issues much better than we have addressed so far in Brazil. But now there is, from 5 years ago, they started really heavily to work on that, and also in schools. But still, as I said, the public schools where the education is free, we do have problems, lots of problems. Is that basic curriculum, is that basic teaching kind of thing, which is very different. In music, I did research on technology in public school and private school, and the sort of cognitive gap is quite big, and is reinforced by the way teaching is doing, by the way the whole school works. And so I don't know if I got back to the question. Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious. I mean, as somebody who's been on a homestay in several countries myself, that idea of having university students or before university have an experience in another country, I know is very powerful. But I'm wondering if you've seen in your travels and your work the idea of not necessarily going to another country, but going to your own country that might seem very foreign to you.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of our students from the suburbs, wealthy, usually white students. I think teaching in an inner city school for them or living in those neighborhoods is like going to a different country for them.
Oh, yes.
Have you seen any successful?
I cannot talk about success, but in Brazil we have a program called Universia from Santander that they send in to different regions of Brazil. As I said, Brazil is very diverse. In the south, you have one standard of living, one set of schools. If you go to the north of Brazil in the Amazon area, there are regions that you only go by boat. So then the books come from Brasilia, our capital, that talk about train, about this and this and that. And for them it's a complete abstraction about the kind of knowledge that they are getting culturally speaking. So within a country is also very important. But what I mentioned is more in a sense of facing adversities, of learning another language, understanding the social codes of another country. Because I remember when I first came to America, Brazil and some other cultures, we touch a lot. We touch people. You know, we talk touching people. And when I came here, people were doing like that, you know, and I said, what's wrong with that? And all of a sudden, a teacher told me, well, you should not, touch other people. So it's different. It's just different. And by living in another country, even for, a couple of weeks or months, and learning, being immersed into that, is a way of understanding how the world is complex. Also, in Brazil, I had my research group, people coming from abroad, wanting to stay there, wanting to go to school and see how we work, how everything is done. So it is important. They come back with a different view of, and then they get into a room like this one, perfect, or even the upstairs room was perfect, and then facing a complete different scenario. Yeah. So it's valid to be within the country in different kinds of school. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. They could do that as well, yeah.
You talked a little bit about visa, right?
Yeah.
I think right now in Brazil, we have a big discussion on the Brazilian common core.
Yeah.
So I'd like to know
or the Common Core, the BNCC, the curriculum, the basic curriculum. Yeah. Well, it's quite controversial because the Common Core is nothing new than it was a Common Core 100 years ago. And so we are trying to push on a different kind of agenda nowadays. And so that's why I think it is still a problem. It has to go to review. But the problem in Brazil, it's a more aggravating one. They think that consulting the whole population, they will get to a document, to a good document. I don't know how it's done here, but I will not say. But in Brazil, it's like that. They put a document of 230 pages or something like that. And then teachers all over Brazil have to say something about the document. That's the core curriculum, which could be said in 5 pages or 10 pages, something like that. So it becomes quite a cage of many different peacocks and birds and things like that at the end of the day, and Frankenstein, actually. So I don't have many good things so far to say about. It's a lot of the same, much of the same so far.
Is there Common Core in the arts as well, standard?
Oh no, arts education is compulsory once a week, and one teacher is supposed to teach all the art subjects. We had a really big campaign to include music as compulsory. And now it is a compulsory content, but not a subject. But at the higher education level, and then it's a kind of schizophrenia, because at the higher education level, we have courses like music to prepare teachers for music, for visual arts, for drama, for dance. But when they go into school, they have to teach all the subjects, which they end up not teaching of them. They choose, and since there is no big evaluation system of how a teacher does inside the classroom, so anything goes in that regard. But it's not much valued, those kind of subjects. It's more related to PISA, how well they are going to do in international assessment, about literacy. And the other problem that we have, I don't know if you have in some schools here, children who reach like the 4th year of study, and they read, but they don't understand what they read. We call them functional illiterate. Am I translated? Illiteracy? Functional, yeah. And so that's a major problem, because you're supposed to be literate by the time you get to the 4th grade, and then you face that. And I would say I get master's students sometimes that are in that position. Sorry.
Congratulations for your work and your exposition. Very interesting. I was wondering about more political issues.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking, how link music projects are with integral community projects. Many times schools are isolated from the community, and the same kind of school is the same idea of school is working in Amazon or in Rio Grande do Sul or in Champagne or in Spain. So I think you thought about very important issues, but very different issues. So how link this kind of projects based on music are with other kind of projects more in the communities, the local communities?
Help me a little bit. Those examples that I brought?
Yeah. The proposal of music projects for social inclusion.
Yeah.
So kind of projects, and I worked on
Yeah.
some kind of project, are calming people
Mm.
to be better explored, or, and mostly in young people, teenagers, and
Mhm.
so how can we do a more critical project, or
Mhm.
I don't know if
Yeah,
that's
I understood. I understood. Perhaps I'm going to answer from a different angle. Brazil is well known, and many other countries, for social projects in music. But then I would say that they are excluded, because once you say, well, I'm going to work in this slum area or this favela because they need, then you leave another favela out. But if you have music in schools, for example, it's less likely that you will leave children out. They can opt if they want to be engaged in music making or arts or any other subject. I would not invest a lot of money in social projects. I would invest in their general education, and that education had quality. You know? Had the subjects had inner quality, in the sense of developing them as human beings, no matter in which context they live. And also what I think is that we have to work on the issue of social mobility. You know, I'm not saying anything new. Authors said already, because some schools, they work to maintain that status quo of the children.
Yeah, but social
Yeah.
mobility is a more individual strategy to,
Mm.
to get a better position in society.
Yeah.
So what about collective mobility or social? You understand?
Yeah.
So school, many children and many teenagers are out of school.
Yeah.
Or
Oh, yeah.
willing to be out of schools.
Mm.
So how to engage?
Mm.
I think it's important to open school for the communities,
Mhm.
and the projects try to link community and
Mhm.
schools.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, Brazil has created a program of Bolsa Família, which is a scholarship for a family that send their children to school. So it's a salary that each family wants. But there was a reproduction of the model, like if I have 3 children, so I'm going to have 10, because then I get more money. That was the reasoning behind it. So just reproduce again and again and again the same model. I don't think that is the model that has, but actually supervising. Brazil is very good in establishing laws and rules and regulations, but they don't have a follow-up of that, if that is really doing well or not. So it's a gap.